Welcome, everyone. I just wanted to introduce you to Atara Starr. Atara Starr is a beloved educator at Madrasha Harova, where she teaches Tanakh, Hasidut, Jewish philosophy, and is a mashgicha guiding students through their year in Israel. She's from New York. She studied Bible and Jewish history at Starr College and got a master's in Jewish education from the Israeli Graduate School. I made Aliyah in 2011 and now lives in Mitzvah Richo. She is my neighbor. She lives there with her husband and her 4 children. She also is one of our Kavua teachers at our OUisrael Atid program for young Olot. But it's a pleasure to be able to let the rest of you also hear from her words of wisdom. So thank you, Atara.
Is there another good cooking most of us on here? Yeah. Okay. There was a pile of swearsheet. Swearsheet's going around. Good. No. Okay. I'm gonna leave extra swearsheets over here.
I'm sorry. She gave her another number.
Everybody else. Oh, wait. Okay. Okay. Thank you for having me. It's a nice zchut to be part of this amazing Torah initiative. Can you all hear me?
No.
Don't like microphone. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
No.
Okay. I'd like to open with a Gemara that left me wondering a little bit. But there are more source sheets if you like. Feel free to help yourself. In source number 1 on your sheet. Okay. Vayavor Hashem al panav vayikra amar Rabbi Yochanan ilmalei mikra katuv yefshar leomra. The pasuk, as we'll get to later, where Hashem introduces to us his 13 attributes of mercy, say Vayavor Hashem al panav, that Hashem passes over Moshe. And there, Rabbi Yochanan says that had this not been written, we would not have been able to say it. And we learn from this verse that Hashem wrapped himself in a talit as a shaliach tzibor and showed Moshe the seder of tefillah, of the Yigimel Midot HaRachamim, of what it looks like to pronounce the 13 Midot HaRachamim as tefillah. Amar lo kol zman sheYisrael chotin yasu lefanai kaseder hazeh va'ani mochalo. And Hashem turns to Moshe and says, every time that the Jewish people sin, do this seder hatefillah, and I will forgive them. And there's a lot of issues with this Gemara, and I can't unpack all of them. But I found this very shocking. It seems like a very simple formula, right? Here we are in the month of Elul, preparing ourselves for Yom Hadin, to be judged before Hashem. And all we have to do is wave a little magic wand and say the 13 Midot HaRachamim, and we are forgiven, right? That's like, I don't know what all this work was for the last 30 days. It seems a little bit too easy to be true. And I actually found it quite disturbing that here we are so engrossed in Elul and Ani Ladodi, Vadodi Li, and Amalach Basada, and all these ideas of all these things that I have to put these work into. And we're going to come before Hashem on Yom Hadin to be judged. But now Hashem is full of rachamim. It just didn't really make any sense. So what I'd like to do here is to really unpack a little bit of what this revelation of the Yigimel Midot, what the revelation of the Yigimel Midot HaRachamim are, what really happened, put them into context, and to try to understand what it is that Hashem is revealing to Moshe through these Midot, and why this is the solution to our problem, why these are our answer of how to be forgiven. So in order to do that, we kind of have to backtrack. We need to open up our Tanakh brain a little bit and go back into the story of Chet HaEgel. So I'm going to take you back a little bit and give you a little bit of context of where we are when Hashem reveals the Gimel Midot HaRachamim. So Moshe goes up to Har Sinai. He is delayed, or so B'nai Yisrael seem, and they decide to make a golden calf, and they're dancing around the calf. And what happens? Hashem is very angry. And so he tells Moshe, go down from this mountain because that nation that you took out of Mitzrayim, they are corrupt. And I'm not having it. And Moshe is a little bit hesitant to leave Har Sinai at that point because he knows that the reality is that if he listens, then Hashem is actually going to destroy us. So he first puts in a quick little plea and he says, 1 second, Hashem, remember there's a Brit Avot and we don't want to make a Chilul Hashem. You just took us out of Mitzrayim. The whole world knows what just happened. So let's, calm down. And Hashem says, fine, I'll calm down. But he's still angry. So then Moshe at that point goes down the mountain. He smashes the Luchot HaBrit, that covenant that we just made with God on Har Sinai. And then he goes and he destroys the calf and he kills off all the people who did Chet HaEgel. And we're like one step closer to a little bit of forgiveness. But at this point, Moshe's still concerned. Hashem has not yet forgiven us. The people are a mess. Everybody doesn't know what's happening. So Moshe says, let me go ask Hashem for forgiveness. So he goes to speak to Hashem. And what does Hashem tell him? Hashem tells Moshe, okay, this is what I'm agreeing to. You can keep going on to Eretz Yisrael, but a Malach is taking you instead of me. Okay? No more Shechina in your presence. It's you and Bnei Israel now because they are an Am Kshei Oref and I'm tired of it. They're stubborn, they don't listen, and I'm not having it. And Moshe is not pleased with this response. And not only is Moshe not pleased, this is where we see Vayitabu Ha'am, right? The nation is really mourning for this loss of Hashem's presence. And there's a little bit of pain. And Moshe sees that maybe there's a little bit of hope. So he says, okay. And then we get to, I think, the weirdest part of the story, which I actually really don't have a great explanation for all the details of it. We're going to look at it from a bigger picture. But we enter Perek Lamed Gimel of Sefer Shemot. And Moshe does a very strange thing. He moves his tent out of the camp. And this is now the place where Moshe will speak to Hashem. And he enters into a philosophical, theological debate with God. Harini na et kvodecha, hodini na et, harini na, Harini na et kodecha, hodini na darkecha, right? Show me your ways, tell me who you are. All of our questions about God, we're waiting for them to be answered. And it's at that point that Hashem says, go make a second set of luchot, and he reveals his 13 Mizot HaRachamim. So what just happened? Something just happened. Oh, a lot of things just happened. So I want to suggest, if you'll allow me, that I think there are two main events in all of those series of events that really propelled this moment of Hashem revealing Yud Gimel Mizot HaRachamim, and that are going to help us understand a little bit about the tshuva process. And I think those two things, more than anything else, and not to say that all of the stages are definitely important, those two things are the breaking of the Luchot, the actual destruction of the Luchot HaBrit, and the fact that Moshe has this deep conversation with God that we actually don't understand, to the point that Rav Hirsch's entire commentary on Perek Lamed Gimel is tread lightly and do not try to translate this. So I'm not going to try to translate this because I'm a big Rav Hirsch fan and I would not dare. But we are going to try to understand a little bit of what happens there when Moshe leaves the camp and starts to engage directly with God, because that seems to be a significant turning point. And we're going to work backwards, because I think once we understand that, we might be able to understand a little bit of why Moshe broke the Luchot and how we got to these midot. So Rabbi Sachs has an absolutely beautiful explanation of what happens when Moshe starts to engage with God. If we think about Chet HaEgel, the moment that everything starts to shift and really get messed up is the minute that the people think that Moshe is missing, right? Their leader is missing. They don't know where Moshe is. They're feeling lost without him. He has been their guiding light in many ways, and Moshe's not there. And Moshe's absence seems to create space for sin. And it seems to be that's the language that Hashem is using. Go down, your nation has sinned, right? Your people. And it's the only time that Hashem calls them Amcha, right? It's not my nation anymore, it's yours, Moshe, right? Your people have sinned, you're not there, and you need to take responsibility. And the truth is, that's exactly what Moshe does. He goes down the mountain and he takes responsibility, he engages, and he breaks the luchot, he destroys the calf, he does it all. But then, once they're past that point where he's shown up for the people and he's done what he's supposed to do, says Rabbi Sachs, Moshe does an unbelievable thing. He moves his tent and he starts to talk to God, and he says, 1 second, this is not working. What's not working? Take a look at verse number 2. He, Moshe, was in effect saying to God, what the people need is not for me to be close to them. I am just a human, here today, gone tomorrow. You are eternal. You are their God. They need you to be close to them, right? I've done my part. I have been with them. I went. I stepped in. Where are you? The people don't know the you that I have gotten to know, right? Rabbi Sach says it was as if Moshe is saying, until now they've experienced you as a terrifying elemental force, delivering plague after plague to the Egyptians, bringing the world's greatest empire to its knees, dividing the sea, overturning the very order of nature itself. At Mount Sinai, merely hearing your voice, they were so overwhelmed that they said, if we continue to hear the voice, we will die. The people needed, said Moshe, to experience not the greatness of God, but the closeness of God. Not God heard in thunder and lightning at the top of the mountain, but as a perpetual presence in the valley below. Right? Our experience of Hashem from the moment we were revealed, Moshe revealed himself as God's emissary in Mitzrayim, has been incredibly intense. Plagues, thunder, lightning, death, right? Massive miracles. We're seeing God in his greatest element, this omnipotent God, this omniscient God, everything amazing about God, except for the fact that we can actually have a relationship with God. We don't know that yet. We have not experienced that, not once. That is why Moshe removed his tent and pitched it outside the camp, as if to say to God, it is not my presence the people need in their midst, but yours. That is why Moshe sought to understand the very nature of God himself. Is it possible for God to be close where people are? Can transcendence become immanence? Can the God who is vaster than the universe live within the universe in a predictable, comprehensible way, not just in the form of miraculous intervention? Moshe is questioning, can the way that God has presented himself to Bnei Israel up until this point be sustainable? Is it sustainable? Is this a sustainable relationship between Bnei Israel and Hashem? Is it possible? Is there another way? Maybe. What's the answer to it? Well, yes, Hashem reveals his midot harachamim. And you know how I know that God agrees with Moshe? Because crazily enough, a few generations later, we have an amazing prophet, a very, very challenging prophet to understand. His name is Eliyahu. He's a little bit passionate. He's a little bit fiery. He's a little bit angry. He really wants Bnei Israel to do tshuva, and he's had it with them because they won't. So what does he do? He goes running to the desert, and he says to Hashem, in source number 3, right? I am zealous for God, and your people, they will not leave their avodah zarah, and they will not do anything. I've tried everything for you, and you, they don't listen to me. I'm the only one who cares about God. Kill me now. We have 2 prophets in all of history that asked to die, Eliyahu and Yonah. They're a handful, okay? But it's out of zealousness for God that he wants to die. He's had it. He can't put up with this. He's fiery and he's intense. And what does Hashem say to him? This is actually one of my most favorite episodes in all of Tanakh. Vayomer, say va'amad bahar lifnei Hashem. Hashem sends Eliyahu outside. And he sends to him, V'hinei Hashem over, v'ruach gdola v'chazak mefari karim, u'mishaber sla'im lifnei Hashem. Lo beruach Hashem. Hashem sends massive winds, and they're breaking things, and the rocks are falling. And then Hashem says, Hashem's not in the wind. V'achar haruach rash. Lo berash Hashem. And then Hashem sends an earthquake. Hashem's not in the earthquake. It sounds like a children's book. V'achar harash eish. And after the earthquake, fire. Lo be'esh Hashem. Hashem is not in the fire. And after the fire, there is silence. And says the Malbim that this is Hashem's exact message to Eliyahu. You want to be a prophet? You know what it means to be a prophet? It means to be able to talk to the people. You can't come and scream in their face and say you must do tshuva or else you will die. This is like Kiruv 101. You want to get a person to do tshuva, you want to get a person to come close to God. You can't say, if you wear that, you will die, right? That will not work. It won't work. When I worked in NCSY, I was hanging out with the kids and dance with them and sing with them. That's why NCSY works, right? Because it's love and it's energy and it's music. This is Hashem's message to his prophet. So now we come back to Moshe and we're like, wow, Moshe had a good point, huh? Like Hashem took it. Moshe had a good point. Not only did we know that he has a good point, but if you think about what Rabbi Sach said and you go back to the original Luchot, let's talk for a second about what did Hashem give us in the original Luchot, right? We make a covenant with Hashem on Har Sinai. Take a look at the language of the Luchot, okay? The Aseret HaDibrot, source number 3. It's fascinating. Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher tzitzecha me'eretz Mitzrayim, right? I am the Lord your God. I'm not going to go through every pasuk, but if you skip a little bit, Lo tishtachaveh lahem v'lo ta'avdim ki anochi Hashem Elokecha. Do not bow down to any other gods because I am your God. El kano poked avon avot al banim al shlosham v'al ribiim l'sonai v'oseh chesed alafim la'ohavei l'shamrai mitzvoti. Lo tisad shim Hashem Elokecha lashav ki lo yinakeh Hashem et asher yisad shmo lashav. Don't bow down to other gods because I am a zealous God. And I will remember if you do something wrong. Not only will I remember, but I will remember for 3 to 4 generations. And I will only do chesed for those who are listening to me, who are keeping my word and my Torah. And do not take advantage of Hashem, because I will not forget. Right? There is very different midot described here than what we see in Yegimel Midot HaRachamim. This is the God that presented himself to us on Har Sinai. And this is the God that Moshe is asking, is there another way? Right? Because according to Brit Sinai, the truth is that as soon as we made the Egel, Hashem wants to kill us, and rightfully so, right? We made a covenant with God. We stood there at Har Sinai. They are called Luchot HaBrit for a reason. We made a covenant, and we signed up for this. And Hashem said, if you don't do it, you will be punished, and I will remember you. Not only will you be punished, but I will remember you doing this for generations, right? And I will only do chesed for those who listen to me. That's not even mercy. Chesed for those who do my mitzvot is not an act of mercy. That's emet. That is the real deal. That is like, if you deserve, you will get it. Which is why when Bnei Israel sin, Hashem's response is in source number 4, right? Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Ra'iti et ha'am hazeh v'hinei am kshei urafu. I see your nation, and they're stubborn. They don't listen to my word. I literally just told them, don't do it. And what do? They did it. Right? Like, they are so, like, it's like talking to my 5-year-old. Right? Like, don't do that. So now I will eat them alive. Right? So that doesn't work with a child. Now, what Moshe has to say is that's not going to work with Bnei Israel either, because the reality is that Hashem is right. We are an am kshei uraf. You know why? Because we're human and we make mistakes. So we have a problem here. We have a problem with the original brit that was created. We have a problem with the fact, we have a problem that if we continue in this fashion, it's not going to end very well. So what does Moshe do? As soon as he comes down from Har Sinai, what is the first move he makes? He breaks the luchot. He breaks the tablets, right? And it seems in the pasuk that he's very angry. He breaks the tablets because he's angry, right? And the truth is that he is angry. He's angry at Bnei Israel because they did not uphold their side. But why does he break the tablets? Not because he is angry, but because he needs to break the covenant. Because if we keep that one, we're in serious trouble, right? He has to create a change here, right? And this is what's brought down in the Shemot Rabbah, source number 7. למה הדבר דומה לשר ששלח לקדש אישה עם הסרסור הלך בקלקלה עם אחר. Right? What is this like? So the Medrash gives an equivalent to a prince or a king who he sends a messenger to go be Mekadesh his wife. Like, he sends him with a ksuba to go be Mekadesh his wife. But then he finds out that she's been with somebody else. Hasirsu shayanaki ma'asa natalt ktubata mashinitan lo hasar likatcha v'kara. So he's just in the middle of this, and he didn't do anything wrong. So what does he do? He tears up the ktuba. Amar mutav shetidon kipnuya v'lo keishat ish. And he says it's better that she should be judged as a woman who is not yet married, right? As opposed to the woman who was married. Kach asa Moshe. Kevan she'asu Yisrael oto ma'aseh natal et haluchot v'shivran. Klomar Ilu haya ru'in unshan lo chatau. Right? And Moshe does the same thing. He sees that we're in a reality that we have been unfaithful to God. There is truth to that. We have been unfaithful. But the only way to potentially seek any kind of forgiveness is to annul the marriage contract. We have to go back to square one. This isn't going to work the way it is. It's not sustainable. And what do we know? We know also that Akash Baruch Hu agreed with him. The Gemara says, Amar Rish Lakish asher shibarta, Amar lo Akash Baruch Hu l'Moshe yasher koach shibarta. Good job, Moshe. Right? Because at the end of the day, as human beings, this is not going to work long term. So Moshe makes a decision. He makes a decision that I think comes to our favor in the eyes of God, but I think it also has another layer to it. The Shvirat HaLuchot, on the one hand, protects us from God's wrath to a certain extent. He's still going to be angry, right? We still have a broken marriage contract. That's still painful. It's still a problem. But there's something else that's going on here with the breaking of the Luchot, and I think that's the message that Moshe has to make for Bnei Israel at that moment. Rav Yigal Ariel And it has an amazing sefer called Arapei Mishubatam, which is all about tshuva in Tanakh and in Mikra and Chazal. But he talks about this idea, and he says, "Bimkom litashtesh et hadvarim," in verse number 8, "Uleyachiz b'sridei hesegi ha'avar shebatlu za'azeh Moshe ta'am v'her'alo shenotra mitziyut chadasha." Right? He could sit down with the people and have another conversation and have some kind of intellectual debate with them and be like, "Guys, this isn't working out," right? But I can tell you from parenting that I'm still trying to figure out every single day, that often when I take some kind of action as opposed to saying the same things over and over 10 times, it seems to usually go a little bit farther. So that's what he does. He has to do something physical to get their attention, to make them understand that this reality that you have now created is not going to work. So not only from God's end is this not going to be sustainable for us, but you have responsibility in this also. Like Bnei Israel, just because we broke the marriage contract is not just a protection and now we're good to go. He says that we actually really ruined it. It was us. At the end of the day, we ruined everything that we received at Ma'amad Har Sinai. Moshe chayav et ha'am להתמודד מחדש על אהבת Hashem וקרבתו, ובזה פתח לו צעד ראשון לתשובה. And what he's really making the nation think about is, where is your ahavat Hashem? Right? Where is your relationship with God? I think this seems to be the missing piece from both ends. That on the one hand, Hashem has been, fire and passion and harsh words and an intense relationship. And on the other hand, Bnei Israel have been scared. They're scared and they're overwhelmed. So this relationship has not yet been created. So what Moshe is saying, I'm breaking things down for you. Without Ma'amad Har Sinai and without the Luchot, you need to think about, how do you come back? How do you create a loving relationship with your God? How do you take the next first step? And the next first step is always often built after we break things down, right? This is the famous saying of Menachem Mendel of Katz, there is nothing so whole as a broken heart. If we want to get somewhere in life, we usually have to break some things down first. We usually have to take one step back to go 2 steps forward. And the Sivos Shalom, in source number 9, beautifully states that this is one of Moshe's greatest acts. Breaking the Luchot here was one of his greatest acts. כדאמר חז"ל על הפסוק, לכל היד החזקה וגומר אשר עשה משה לעיני כל ישראל, שנשאו ליבו לשבור הלוחות לעיניהם. כאשר משה רבינו ראה שאין ישראל תיקון. Right? He could have broken them up at the top of the mountain. It's very specific. Moshe pleads with Hashem. He gives him the time to calm down a little bit, so to speak. And then he comes down, and the first thing that they see when he gets down that mountain is crashing of the most important things that they could have ever owned in front of their eyes. It was intentional. That there was no other way. Because what is the reality? The people's hearts were so full. They were so full of the wrong thing at the time. But the people are dancing and they're singing around a golden calf. And Moshe says, you need to break your hearts open a little bit. You want to let God in? You need to realize what you're missing. He had to make an emotional movement to make something happen. There was no other way around it. Can't even imagine what that means. What they've been through. I always think about the trauma of the nation that left Mitzrayim, but what they've been through as a people. And then they receive this gift from God, and there's all this massive excitement around it. And then Moshe comes down and said, you can't have it. You can't have it. The pain of what it means to break these luchot was the ticket to our return. Right? This is the path forward. That often our tshuva only really starts to work when we open ourselves up, right? And why are we breaking themselves open? Because if you don't break yourself open a little bit, then it's hard to feel closeness, right? The most important relationships in our lives are where we are able to be vulnerable. And it's uncomfortable. And it's a reality that for today's generation, I teach teenagers, this is so painful. Vulnerability is not their skill. We're working on it. But this is a really real thing. That we have to, open up our whole broken heart before people who we want to come close to. And certainly when it comes to God, if we want to find our path back to Hashem, we're going to have to break our hearts. And that's only going to come for this Shviyat HaLuchot. what is important to mention, and it's not in your source sheet. Oh, actually, it's about in your source sheet in source number 10, is that it's a very well-known idea that the broken luchot went inside the aron with the second set of luchot. And there is something very powerful to be said of the fact that even when we mess up, and even when we are broken, and even when things are hard, it's a part of our journey. Right? We never would have gotten ultimately to this place where Hashem is going to reveal himself in a different way that we're waiting for. And we never would have gotten to the relationship that we have right now with the Kadosh Baruch Hu had we not gone through this reality. And it's not something that we're ashamed of. This is not something that we look back on. I mean, there's shame around Chet HaEgel. It's a little bit, it's even hard for us to understand that this is what Bnei Israel did when we are objective readers of the Torah and we're looking at all this has happened and we get to see everything and we're like, what do you mean? This God just took you out of Mitzrayim. How could you possibly do this? But the reality is that brokenness is what brings us to the next step. And it's something to keep in mind in our path of tshuva, that this is how it works as well. When we come with tshuva before Hashem, the goal is not to wipe our slate clean and pretend that we're perfect. We're not perfect human beings. And that's Moshe's entire message to Hashem. And we're not going to be perfect human beings. We're not going to be perfect human beings. So now what? So now what do we do? Right? Because here we are now, okay, we are on the path to tshuva. Moshe's kind of like pushing Bnei Israel in the right direction. He's trying to get them to break their hearts. They're mourning the fact that Hashem's not going to come with them to the midbar. What is the path forward? How do we do it? So it's at this point, I think, where we can come back to Rabbi Sachs. Because this is the point where Hashem says, okay, we need another way, right? We need another path. And this is where Hashem introduces for the first time in Torah the idea of pardon, of being pardoned by God, the idea of mercy, that I can function differently. That's what I brought to you in source number, let's look at the page. In source number 11, right? This is the very end of Parak Lamed Gimel, after this whole conversation with Moshe. Vayomer Hashem and Moshe gam et hadabar hazeh asher dibarta eseh ki matzati chayim beinacha v'adacha b'shem. Hashem agrees to come back to Bnei Israel. That's like an unbelievable thing. Where does this come from? Because he says, it's continued on the next page, Vayomer ani avir kol tuvi al panacha v'karati b'shem Hashem v'nacha v'chanoti et asher achon v'yichalti et asher achim. Because I will have mercy, essentially, is the answer. I will have mercy. Yeah.
Isn't that the same way that Hashem wants to create the world with judgments and then be tempted with perfection? Because he realized that the world could not exist with pure judgments.
Yeah, I personally have learned it the other way, but again, I'm a little bit of a follower of Rav Hirsch, and he tends to see it the other way, that creation by nature is an act of kindness, that Hashem creates with kindness, and then he has to put that in its place with judgment. I think there's always a balance, and I think it's not a new idea that Moshe's not introducing something to God, right? We can't even imagine for a second that this is something God doesn't know. But I think as Moshe, the human being, and God as the all-powerful being, Moshe's saying, 1 second, let's take a step back. Like this, this is a new concept, a nation and a God who are going to have a close relationship. I think this is our whole struggle of what we experience on Rosh Hashanah. There's, Hashem is Avinu Malkinu. Hashem is our Father and our King. So which one is it? It's both, right? There is this reality that I think the Yud Gimel Midot don't replace. I think this is what we're going to get to ultimately. It's not going to replace Hashem's Midat Hadin. At the end of the day, Rosh Hashanah is Yom Hadin. But there has to be a reality that even for us to be judged, there has to be a path back, because otherwise we would just die. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as if we do the wrong thing, Hashem will punish us. So if we want a room for there to exist any space for tshuva, then we need there to be Rachamim in the framework of Brit Sinai specifically. And I think it's at this point that Hashem sends Moshe back up and he says, go make a new set of luchot. And it's fascinating because if you look at the Yud Gimel Midot HaRachamim and the way that Hashem appears, and if you happen to, I should have made this in a chart form, but if you happen to look at the same time at the Psukim in source number 3 of the Midot that Hashem revealed himself with during the first set of Luchot, and now the way Hashem reveals himself in the second set of Luchot, it's eerie. It's exactly parallel to each other, but this time with a whole new energy, right? Take a look at source number 12. שני לוחות אבנים כראשונים וישכם משה בבוקר ויעל הר סיני כאשר ציווה השם ויקח בידו שני לוחות אבנים וירד השם בענן ויתייצב עם משה שם ויקרא בשם השם. Moshe gets the second set of luchot ready, also to note that they are basically man made this time. They are not God made, because there's an understanding now that man have to be a leader in this relationship with God. We have to take charge of our relationship with God. It's not random that Elul is ani ledodi v'dodi li. It begins with us. It begins with us actually doing the work to put it in. You can't come before Yom Hadin without having put in the individual work. And at that point, Hashem passes over him. Vayavor Hashem al panav. ויקרא השם רחום וחנון ערך אפיים רב חסד ואמת נוזר חסד לאלפים נושא עוון בפשע וחטא ונקה לא ינקה פוקד עוון אבות על בנים ועל בני בנים על 30 ועל 40. Almost the exact same attributes in the opposite form, right? Hashem is forgiving. Hashem is patient. Hashem will withhold his anger. Hashem will withhold his anger for many generations so that we have time to do tshuva, right? What Hashem has literally introduced in between the lines of the text, right here with the giving of the second luchot, is tshuva. Tshuva is this massive concept that exists in Tanakh, and there are very few sources that are very clear about what exactly tshuva is in Tanakh. There's obviously very beautiful psukim about returning to Hashem, but this is our first national understanding of what does it mean to have an opportunity to do tshuva. This is as far as we can go from Brit Sinai, and we've come all the way back around. That is an unbelievable thing. It's an unbelievable thing. And I think that when you put this back into the context of Hashem's midot harachamim, and what is he revealing to us, right? If you go back to that original Gemara, what's happening when Hashem wraps himself in his talis? So again, what exactly that means and what exactly Hashem is saying? Why is this the key? Why is this the answer? Why is this the you are forgiven if you accept or if you say the Yud Gimel midot harachamim? So it's obviously easier said than done, because it's not just a matter of saying the Gimel Mizot HaRachamim. We have to live by them. We have to understand that if Hashem has given us this opportunity for tshuva, we have to take advantage of it. We have to break our hearts open when it's the month of Elul. We have to break our hearts open during Aseret Yemei Tshuva. We have to beg for that closeness. We have to seek it out. Yud Gimel Midot HaRachamim just means I have given you an opportunity. If you take that opportunity, you will be forgiven. Right? It's that simple. Do it, right? I just gave you all the chances in the world. So if you're given the chance, so then do something about it, right? And there's a very well-known saying in Chazal that the whole concept of Chizah Egel happened just to teach us about the concept of tshuva. And it's for this reason, right? And the Sivos Shalom continues in the same piece, but I brought to you in source number 13. Zel pirush lo hayav ruyim Yisrael lo tel maaseh ela lehorot tshuva l'rabim. This entire thing happened. All these parkim, Lamed Gimel, Lamed Tad, 3 parkim of Tanakh, they all happened to teach us about tshuva. That us, the readers of Tanakh, here in 2025, that we are going to know what it really means to do tshuva. Shezohi derech hatshuva shel Yehudi yesh tamid etza. Shivron halev. That it begins with the breaking of our hearts. It begins with recognizing that we are not where we are supposed to be. That something is not right. That we don't have it all, right? It's very easy in the modern era to feel like we are living actually in many ways in the luckiest time ever. We have Torah at our fingertips, Sefaria and Ala Torah. Everywhere you go is a Beit Midrash. Everywhere you go, there's Chabad, right? We're living in unbelievable times. It's very easy to feel full in our Avodas Hashem. It's a bracha that we could feel full in our Avodas Hashem. Look at everything else we're dealing with. Don't tell me that we're living in 2025 and we can't break our hearts open a little bit. Right? It begins with Shivron Aliv, that there's something missing. There's something missing that I don't feel the direct connection. At the end of the day, we're living in Galut, we're living in exile. There's Hester Panim. I don't feel Hashem in my midst. We have been fortunate enough in the last 2 years to see outright miracles in our lives. Outright miracles. Are we living with that awareness that God is in our midst every single day, 24/7? Are we? Are we living with a feeling that God is in my midst and I can't access him and I can't feel, there's a shivron leave, there's a feeling of something is not right. There has to be. וזהו מאמר הכתוב הנני נשבעת אתכם על אמריך לא חטאתי ובעצם אחי איש חלק שהוא כאנוס שלא היה בידו מה לעשות כמאן דאמר גלוי בידו לפניך שיצר הרע מגרה אותנו והנני נשבעת אותך רק על אמריך לא חטאתי כי נזכר שעיקר חטא העגל היה המחולות. I'm gonna skip a little bit. כמאמר הכתוב לי נשבר ונתקע אלוקים לא תבזה דמשמע שאין במי שלפי שמעשיו הכין ראוי להתבזות אבל מכיוון שהוא ליב נשבר ונתקע לכין אלוקים לא תבזה. A person who really understands this midah of breaking our hearts open, of breaking those luchot, of realizing that we have not come all the way, that this brit that we've made with Hashem is not working the way that it should. Something is missing. Hashem will never forsake that person. This is the message of tshuva l'rabim. This is the message of tshuva for OUisrael. שאפילו לאחר מעשה העגל ולאחר המחולות, מכיוון שהיה להם הכרת החטא והתאבלו, קבלם הקדוש ברוך הוא ושוב קרא להם בני ישראל. It's miraculous that Hashem forgave us for chet ha'egel. It's miraculous, right? It makes no sense. You read that Starr Dibro, like, we were out of there. But the fact that there was a shivron aliv, there was a recognition, there was a vayit ablu, right? The next reaction when they find that Hashem is on their midst, there's mourning, right? Mourning, real mourning. Do we mourn that we don't have a direct connection to Hashem nowadays? That's what Hashem is asking for a shivron aliv. And I was thinking about this a little bit more, because the Yud Gimel Mizot HaRachamim and the way that Hashem describes it or the way that it is described in the Gemara that Hashem described to Moshe, it's a tefillah that a shaliach tzibor needs to say, right? I don't have the great zchut these days, Baruch Hashem, as a mother of little children, to get to slichot most of the time, which means that I don't really get the opportunity to say Gimel Mizot HaRachamim, which this was really my chance to engage with it a little bit. But it's not surprising to me that it's something that we say in a tzibor, right? It's something that you have to say with a shaliach tzibor, you have to say with the minyan. And I think that it's because there's this national aspect of awareness that Hashem gave us a gift as a nation to do tshuva. That part of the tshuva process is not just about me. And it's about being part of a nation that we all hold this responsibility to come close to Hashem. And my tshuva is dependent on your tshuva, and your tshuva is dependent on the next person's tshuva, that we need to be doing tshuva as a cloud. Rav Hirsch speaks about this in quite a lot of places, but I brought to you one where he speaks about slichot in his collected writings in his 4th volume of Elul. And he says, all the liturgical works which comprise the prayers and slichot have in common one characteristic. Virtually all of them ask us to mend our ways and seek God's forgiveness, not as individual human beings, but as members of the entity that is the Jewish people. If we were left to our own devices, then certainly we would voice our needs and hopes only from the vantage point of our personal lives. But not so slichot. They address themselves to us as members of a nation in the fervent hope that they can best achieve their purpose by appealing to our Jewish national awareness. These slichot remind us of our national sufferings, past and present. They seek to make us feel the impact of restrictions, the oppressions, the pressures, the contempt, the pain, the sighs, the distress, and the misery that blight our existence on earth. We realize that, if anything, these sufferings are proof of our moral defectiveness, of our need to mend our ways and to obtain God's forgiveness. Right? We think when we come into Elul and we're saying slichot, I would think that we're already starting with this, ashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu, that it's all about what I've done wrong, and I've done this wrong, and I've done that wrong. But it's not. It's not what it's about. Slichot is about our national suffering. It's about what we are experiencing as a nation. And the fact that we are still suffering nationally, very much in the here and now, means that we still have ways to go. And it means that as a klal, we have not accessed this point of tshuva. And I think the Yud Gimel Midot HaRachamim is this reminder that as a nation, we need to come before God, right? We don't have to go very far to feel a little bit of brokenness for our nation. We don't have to look very far, right? We don't have to think about anything really beyond this room to think about what we still need as a nation, what is missing. I think, we sit here every single day, we're davening for our chatufim, we're davening for our hostages to come home, we're davening for this war to end, we're davening for Mashiach to come. I think I actually saw something very, very beautiful that Rav Hirsch's son writes in the Haftarot of Rosh Hashanah. On the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we read about Chana and Shmuel. It's a very beautiful and fitting thing for Rosh Hashanah to read about Chana and her tefillah and how to daven and how it's answered. And it's almost like this beautiful package of, this is how to get your tefillah to answer on Rosh Hashanah. On the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we read a Haftarah from Yirmiyahu Perek Lamed Aleph of Kol B'Rama Nishma, right? The story of Rachel Imenu crying for her children. And it's really a nevuah about the return of the Arsair Tashvatim, which doesn't really exist anywhere else in the Nevi'im. Nobody else really talks about the 10 Shvatim, the lost 10 tribes coming back to Israel. And Rav Hirsch says there that one time a year, just one time a year, we should remember that 5/6 of our nation is gone. Right? That we think in this generation that, when we look around, if I were to ask you, what is the worst tragedy that has ever befallen our people? So the Shoah is a really serious one. There's no question. But there was a time where we lost 5/6 of our people. The 10 Shvatim are gone. Right? And here we are struggling. There is real brokenness in this room for what we are experiencing here in this land. And there's also a deep awareness of the closeness that we have with Hashem, that He has shown us His miracles, He has shown us His kindness, He has given us a way back. So I hope this year we can really come together in a unified way and daven as a nation that our Shivron Lev will take us all the way home, and that Hashem will reveal His mercy in the most revealed way possible.